know why you want to do it, because of the impact that you can have, because of how important it is and vulnerable it is to people, and their pain is debilitating. What are you doing it for?
Hello and welcome back to Future You, the podcast brought to you by graduate careers experts Prospects. I'm your host, Emily Slade, and in this episode, I speak to Becca Mann, who works as a physiotherapist.
So I'm Becca. I'm a self-employed physiotherapist. I run my own clinic. I've got a couple in our team. There's me and one other. And yeah, I'm a bit of a sports fanatic.
Let's start with the basics. What is a physiotherapist?
Well, you could say that that's a basic question. So physiotherapy can be split into 3 different sections. So most people don't actually know this. When they say I've seen a physio, they expect to see someone like myself who work in what we call this musculoskeletal side of things. So you've got an injury, you see a physiotherapist, they help you with the injury, whether it's sporting or occupational.
Or bones or muscles.
Bones or muscles, post-operative, if you had a total hip replacement. So that's what we call the MSK side of physiotherapy. But what a lot of people don't realise is there's different roles within physiotherapy whereby you see most of these people in hospital settings or community settings. So the other 2 aspects of physiotherapy, one is respiratory, so helping people with cystic fibrosis, COPD. These people work on the intensive care units. When COVID was big, the physios had a massive role in trying to help those patients on the ITU. So there's that side of physiotherapy. It's much more medical, I would suggest. And it's more rare to find a private respiratory therapist. It's not completely a case of there are none, but it is harder to find someone on a private sort of scope within that field of physiotherapy. And then the final one is neurological physiotherapy. So most commonly that would be stroke patients, or in pediatrics, so children with cerebral palsy, some different disorders that are more rare. They're the more neuro side of things, so brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, those sort of things that require more specialism within the physiotherapy world. Again, you can find private neurological physiotherapists, but you do tend to see more job roles within the NHS with that sort of thing. Okay. So it is a basic question, but actually a complex answer. Yeah, there's a massive scope.
And what's the difference between a physiotherapist and an osteopath?
Well, I can only talk from our path. So they don't do the neurological and the respiratory training. They are more what we would call musculoskeletal based. They can still treat what we call peripheral injuries, so limb injuries, elbows, wrists. But from my understanding, they have a much more intricate knowledge of the spine, and they have a much more intricate knowledge of how the nervous system works within that, and the joints, specific joints. They do tend to treat more specific joints. Their rehabilitation scope is not there as much. So a lot of ours is, what can we give you to help yourself? My understanding is they don't have as much of that. From working with an osteopath myself, that's where we bounced off of our sort of strengths more than anything. That was my strength. His strength was the manual therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I got well to dive into.
It is.
So I guess this ties into, so like, what industry would you put this in?
Myself, I would put myself in private musculoskeletal. Some people might consider me a sports physio.
Okay.
The actual clientele I see, I wouldn't consider myself a sports physio. I would just say I'm a private musculoskeletal therapist, with certain interests that I'm fine. I'm stronger at certain aspects than others.
But you run your own company?
Yeah.
And can you be a physiotherapist without having to run your own company via the NHS?
Yes, and privately. There are private roles out there where people like myself have set up their own company. They've got multiple clinics, or they've got a big clinic where they have multiple rooms within the clinic, and they offer employed salaries. You don't have to be self-employed. The more common route tends to be you're either a freelancer or you are self-employed in those roles. It's really personal preference as to what you're looking for from employment. But it's not, you have to be self-employed. It's not that at all.
Okay, that's good. So if we loop back to salary, what are we looking at in your job role?
So privately, the world is yours. Yeah, there's no cap on earning potential privately. I would, comparing what I found, I had to do a bit of research in terms of what you would get under the NHS. I would say I'm at a higher level than entry level at the NHS currently. But then you've got to remember, being self-employed, no one's paying into your pension.
Yeah.
No one's paying your holiday pay. No one's paying your sick pay. So yes, although you're earning more, are you getting more out? It is a balance. There's ebbs and flows, and there's positive and negatives of both sides of things. I mean, my aim is to have bigger clinic with multi rooms with different therapists that all can work together. And yeah, my earning potential there is uncapped, in my opinion. In terms of the NHS, there are actual bandings, and this is quite easy to find. So that's the private sector. The public sector, or just to roll back onto the private sector, in terms of if you're going employed, I have found when looking for job roles, it's always based on your knowledge base and your experience, how many years you've been graduated. It's what they tend to have they don't put a salary up, it's salaries up for discussion. If it's a self-employed role, the cut, so normally what happens is you earn X amount an hour and the clinic will take a cut of that. Seems to be based around your experience as well. I'm guessing the theory behind that is that they will mentor you a little bit more. And then because that's more work for them, they take a bigger cut. It's also probably their marketing and their experience and their reputation that gets you those clients. And there's always a negotiation later on down the line with more knowledge and more experience as to how that cut works. But then privately, it's a whole different potential. If you're working in the NHS, this banding is, from what I understand, all over. If you're a nurse, if you're a dentist, from my understanding, I might be wrong, this is the structure. And I've had to do some research because from my understanding, it's based on where you live in the UK as well. So I'm assuming a little bit like when you go to uni, you get more maintenance zone if you're in London. I think that's how it works within the NHS. It is location based. And the research that I found was as of 23 to 24 earning bands. So a band 5 is your entry level post uni. So there are band 2, 3, 4 roles, but they're without your level 6 qualifications. You leave university with a level 6 qualification and you go entry level at band 5. The earning potential I found there was from 28 to 34,000. Then you can go up to band 6. Again, it's based on experience, time that you're employed. And that earning potential is 35 to 42,000. It goes then up to a band 7. Now we're talking you're more specialising here. You know what section of physiotherapy you want to be in. You've potentially done rotations and yes, I want to be a neurological physio, or yes, I want to be a respiratory physio. You've really decided this is what you want to do. And it is more of a consultancy base. So you're not one-to-one patients at all time. From what I can see with band 7, you have a bit more of an admin role. And that's 43 to 50,000. And then the band 8s were broken down into 2. So there was an advanced and a clinical specialist. So 8A was your advanced. Earning potential there was 50 to 57. And then clinical specialists, I think I worked under one of these from my understanding, and she really was mainly admin, looking over big cases, but she would come to the hospital and do some face-to-face work, but it wasn't every day. So you've got to understand when you progress through these roles, what's required of you. That experience, that earning potential was 70 to 80k, and this sort of 70 to 80 again is based on experience and all of that sort of stuff. So that's what I found from my research.
That's really helpful, and that sort of also covers career development options, whether you want to go private or public. You can basically, there's always room to move up, like even yourself with your own business. In theory, there's no role to grow into, but you just expand your business.
And privately, I have gone down this route and never worked under the NHS under this banding role. There was the suggestion that I should have done that when I left university. I went through university in a slightly different route, which I'm sure we'll get to, which has made me decide to always go privately. But my personal opinion is with private, there's a bit more flexibility and freedom, but there's also the pressures that I just discussed of, you have to manage that. Yeah, there's pros and cons of both sides of things.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's get into it then and talk about your educational journey.
So I did the long route into recovering on physio. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, and it was really guided by COVID and what happened there.
Oh wow!
So I went to university when I was 18, did the whole A levels, went to university and did a degree called graduate sports therapy. So I was a sports therapist when I was doing my undergraduate, which is, and then people go, what's the difference there?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you the amount of questions I got when I first graduated. And it was so frustrating. You basically want to be, well, what everyone thinks a physio is, but I can't say it.
Yeah.
Legally, you can't say it. The physiotherapy title is protected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was a graduate sports therapist, which is the MSK side of things within physiotherapy. The sports injuries, the exercise rehabilitation, the looking after your rugby player, your cricket player. Most of the education is around that. And it was a great degree. I really enjoyed it. Looking back, would have I done it the other way? And probably would have preferred to have done my undergraduate as a physiotherapy degree, but I'm glad I didn't.
Okay.
I graduated, I started in the private world doing that, working with different physios, osteopaths, different clinics, freelancing, kind of had eggs in loads of different baskets, and then COVID hit and I couldn't work.
Oh yeah, of course, if you're literally relying on physically touching people and moving their bodies to work again, you can't do clinics during a pandemic.
Yeah, you're not, this face-to-face contact just wasn't a thing. And I really had to have a sit and a talk with myself of, is this realistic? Is this manageable? Didn't have the protection of living with my parents. What would I have done?
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of bit the bullet and went back and did my master's.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to be honest, it's so silly. The thing that was making me the most reluctant was that it was a 2 years master's. So most masters are 1 year.
Yeah.
A physiotherapy master's is 2 years because you can't physically get everything into 1 year. So it's basically like going back and doing a whole new degree.
Gosh, yes.
And that's the reason, really, that's what was holding me back, was I don't want to race 2 years. And looking back, I was in my early 20s. What is 2 years at the end of the day?
And so, especially during a pandemic,
I had nothing else to do. So in February 21, I started my master's degree in physiotherapy and did that for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now I'm a fully fledged physio. I have the protected title. I have the Healthcare Professional Council registration, which is the thing that you don't have under sports therapy,
right?
Which is a big protected title. So yeah, that was my journey through education. The long road, 5 years to get to this point. But I think, looking back, it was worth it.
Yeah.
Because I learned things from doing my undergraduate, was exposed to different things, met different people because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me within the masters to see what was important in terms of patient care better, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain aspects that you can be quite naive to when you're fresh into the healthcare world. And because of my undergraduate experience and working in that role, I felt like I got more out of certain aspects of the master's degree. So
nice.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Can you become a physiotherapist without a degree?
That's a yes and no answer.
Okay.
So you have to have a BSc.
Right.
But more recently, they have launched an apprenticeship scheme through the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is something I had to research because it wasn't an option when I was looking into education.
It's been 2 years ago.
Yeah. So really, really recently, it requires a level 6 qualification, which you can only get through university education. Okay, so to get that HCPC registration, they want you to be level 6, but they have launched this apprenticeship scheme, which means you can earn whilst you're getting your physiotherapy qualification. I believe it's a 2 to 4 year course, depending on what apprenticeship you apply for. Mm-hmm. And I understand that you have to have 1,000 hours worth of practice, which is pretty bog standard for what you would do if you went in as a university student. Mm-hmm. And it works out 30 hours a week. And I think within that, you get your education time and your practical work time. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it works more like rotations. What I mean by that is you have 4 months on neuro, 4 months on MSK, their actual job roles. And you have to apply directly to the job role. So it works like you're applying for a job, but then with the understanding that you have to do the education for a degree through a university to get the level 6 qualification. So yes, you do need a university degree, but you don't have to do it just being a student doing what everyone else does when they are 18 sort of thing. So I would have loved that option. That was available around here where I lived when I was looking to get into it.
Nice, brilliant. So you've sort of briefly touched on it, but talk about launching your own business.
Did you get
your job?
How did I get? Well, I created it. It's such a weird thing to say when you do run your own business. You just had an idea and you did it. It's a really odd thing to say, isn't it, actually? So in the sports therapy world, there isn't really too many job roles within the NHS. So I knew that wasn't really an option for me. You go in as a band 4, you don't have that option to be that entry level, even though you have the right degree. So I kept all my eggs in as many different baskets as I could, because that was one of the pieces of advice I got, was get as much information from so many different therapists, physios, osteopaths, all of that sort of thing. So I left university with a freelance agreement with an osteopath clinic. I was also interning with a physio that runs his own clinic. It was sort of a one-man band thing, and then I became the two-man band. I was freelancing for another clinic doing mainly pitch side work, so looking after rugby players mainly, a little bit of netball, hockey, dabbled in a bit of school stuff there. And I took a year to launch Dynamic Recoveries.
Oh, wow.
Because I wanted to do it properly. That might be a bit of a judgy comment, the word properly. But I didn't want to have a business that I launched that I then had to change the logo and I had to change the name because I hadn't thought about it. And I really wanted to do it in a way where there was a website, there was an email, none of this sort of...
As soon as you opened, everything was...
so that it could expand easily with how big it got. So properly, whether that's a word, in my eyes, that was the way to do it. And also, I didn't feel like I had enough experience to launch it straight away.
Fair enough.
I thought I need to be exposed more to different injuries, to understand what's more about, this is a red flag, needs to be with a GP, or this needs to be with this therapist. So, I took a year. So I'd graduated. Well, I mean, we all leave uni about July time, don't we? And then I launched it the following April.
Nice.
And that was just like a few half days a week seeing clients when I could. But that's how I got into my job. And then the more experience you have, the more people that know you, it expands how it wants to expand. It's a very word of mouth business. And different channels, some doors shut, the intern is shut because I was doing my masters, the osteopath clinic shut again because I was doing my masters. I was very short on time, and then it was just working for myself. Finding a clinic, again, that's about who you know. If you're in the right situation and you go, that's a gym that's got a spare room, I can use that, and having a chat and being bold and being able to do those things. And that's how I started working for myself. Which again is a long answer, but that's the reality of these situations. You don't tend to see people that just have this booming 40 patients a week clinic within the first year.
Of course,
it takes a lot of knowledge, experience, seeing from other people what they do well and what they don't do well, and creating your own job from that.
So what do you love most about your job?
This is the cringe answer, but just the impact that you have on people. I mean, 3 weeks ago, in 1 week, I had 2 patients that hugged me because I was just suddenly out of pain. The first one really got me. I was like, God, I had a student in the room at the time as well. I was like, I need to, pull myself together. But I think seeing the relief on people's eyes, because a lot of people come in so anxious about what's going on with them. And you're going, it's just this, and it's a jigsaw puzzle that you have to put together that makes sense to them. And the impact that you can have on, they could just get a good night's sleep. how annoying is it? What price do you put on a good night's sleep?
What's the most important in the world?
And pain can be really demoralizing for people. It really impacts their mental health more than I think people realize. And getting someone out of that state is that's the most rewarding. Yeah. So I would say, the impact on people's lives is the thing I love the most about this job. Yeah.
Nice. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh, wow. Okay. Professionally, I got a piece of advice when I was interning that was a mechanic wouldn't just use one tool to fix a car. So I should be doing as much CPD to expose myself to different treatments, to different conversation starters, different ways of how you can help a patient. Some patients just need talking to. I don't even put my hands on them because they just need that reassurance. But the next person will come through and they're like, I need a bit of a rub down, blah, blah, blah. So that skill is completely different to the patient that needs talking to. So a mechanic wouldn't use just one tool to fix a car.
Yeah.
In life, though, this was my most recent piece of advice that I have passed down to students that have come through my clinic, which is know what you don't know.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Which was given to me from a physio perspective feedback. I was on a placement and there's a bit more expectation on you when you're a master's student to know things. And sometimes you can't know everything. Nobody can physically know everything. If he asked me a question, I knew it, I would try and answer it. I didn't know it, there was no blagging. I just went, I don't know that one, I haven't been exposed to it. And he said, that's the best thing about you is you don't sit there in silence and go, when you clearly don't know it. You haven't answered it in 10 seconds, you don't know. He said, you're really honest about what you don't know and you know what you don't know. And it makes you a safe practitioner. So although it's a piece of life advice, it can be taken to physiotherapy as well. And healthcare in general. If you are honest and you can recognise what you don't know, you'll be a safer practitioner. Regardless of whether you're a physio or an osteopath, whatever it is. So don't try and blag it. People will see through it as well when you try and blag it. So
so the next question I've got is, what hard skills do you rely on?
If you were let's say a mechanic, you'd be like, well, hands-on on a piece of machinery. But although this is probably not a hard skill, your problem solving is really important. It is a jigsaw puzzle. Everyone that comes through the door has certain ways of reporting their issue, and they might not say it in the way that you're taught at uni.
Of course.
That list that you're taught to go through, they might tell you, the first thing they might tell you is the bottom of the list question. Right. You're going to ask. So being able to, can I get the frame of the jigsaw and then can I bring it in? Being able to be that problem solver, being able to ask open-ended questions to be that problem solver is an important thing. I would say your hands-on manual therapy skills are important as well. Your touch, your feel, does this feel like it does on the other side? And is that normal to what you feel on someone else? But your hands-on massage skills, some people want you to beat them up and some people can't cope with it. How does that feel compared to that to their non-affected limb or their non-affected side and stuff like that? So there is a part of your hands-on is quite important. You have to be strong. Easier in the gym. And then the last thing, you have to be, you're almost a detective. Some people won't want to give you information. I don't think they think that they're being standoffish or that they're being
unhelpful.
Or that they're being as I say the same of it's like getting blood out of a stone with some people. I think it comes from nerves. It's quite a vulnerable state to be in.
Oh, definitely.
In my room, admitting that you've got pain and that you've got problems. Some people are not open about that. They'll just say, this is the issue, and then they expect you to know what's going on. So you do have to be a detective, and if you think you've got something in your head that you think it might be, you might go, well, does it do this? Because you've experienced it with someone else. Is it bad here? What are the mornings like? What are the evenings like? sometimes you kind of suggest something and they go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because nobody remembers everything.
No, of course
in the
not.
session.
Yeah.
No one remembers everything that you've told them in the first session either. But yeah, being a detective is quite important, and to come onto that, knowing your anatomy. If you don't know your anatomy, you're not going to get far in this job.
Yeah, that's fair.
You need to know your ligaments, you need to know your muscles, your joints, your medical side of things. You need to know it to help you be that detective.
And then, so we've sort of done a cross mix anyway, and then the soft skills are that communication, problem solving.
Absolutely. You've got to be a good communicator. Even on the days where you don't want to talk to anyone, you've got to you put that out in a different box, and you have to be the best communicator every single day. You have to be the best communicator in the room, because the other person might not be, because of nerves or anxiety or just not really knowing as well. Some people don't know. And an empath. You have to be an empath.
And is there almost a customer service side of it as well? Of like,
yeah.
And then I guess, is there quite a nice thing where you have, maybe if you're working for a private company and you have like a brand, you can be yourself and authentic more, and you can establish what that customer service looks like compared to what you might get on, say, the NHS or a more strict organisation.
Yeah, so that's something I try and teach students when they're coming in, is that this is how I work. It might not necessarily be what you've been exposed to before. There is a bit more structure from my exposure in the NHS of like, here are the questions. They tend to use the same sort of blueprint of exercises. They might not work for someone. So you've got to use your brain to figure out what does. And work with them. If they feel like they're being dictated to, they're not going to do it. As well, which is where the communication comes from. And also, if you can't understand the impact on their life, or even vocalize that you understand there's impact on their life, they're not going to have that rapport with you at all. If it's someone that's a mum and it's their first child and they're in a lot of pain, and I can't do these exercises because I can't walk afterwards because I'm in so much pain after doing it, you don't just give them that blueprint of exercise, and you find something that works for them. And even if it's the most intricate thing that you think isn't going to make a difference, they might come back and say that it does. So, and going, I understand that this is a bit nitpicky, but I want you to still be able to care for your child. Or if it's someone that is a labourer, I still want you to be able to do your job because it's your income. And understanding there's a wider impact to this and how it affects them, how it affects their social life, how it affects their family members. It's really important to show that you understand that, because then they're more likely to come back through the door, even if that exercise hasn't helped them or the treatment you did hasn't helped them, because they see that you see them as a person and not just the next person through the door. And that's personally how I work. It might mean that I spend less time doing hands-on therapy, which another therapist might not do, but I think I place more importance on that. It might be a negative in some situations and it might not work best for some people, but again, it's knowing your limitations. I think my clinic is how I like to work, if that makes sense. I try and instill that in my therapist, and other clinics will be the same. That's whoever's created that business, that's how they want you to work. And you should work to the company ethos. Every other company has an ethos. Marketing companies, restaurants like we're in now, they will want a certain level of service. So it's no different in healthcare, but each individual will kind of taint it in their own way. That's not a negative thing, because we all have different positives and negatives about the way we work. So
So were there any expectations about your career that have turned out different?
Yes. I kind of feel like I should go and do a psychology degree.
Wow.
Mental health, how much mental health you deal with was something I was very naive to. How the impact on mental health can have on an injury or vice versa. Sometimes I feel like I leave work and I'm like, am I a physio or am I cancer?
No, wow.
And it will just depend on the day. Things comes in ebbs. Sometimes I get the most sporty person like myself come through and be like, oh, it'll be all right if I do this. And then other people are so worried about it. I'm not really sure where it comes from. Maybe Dr. Google is an aspect of that. People scare themselves.
Pregnant with a tumour.
Yeah. That was an aspect of it I wasn't expecting, I have to be honest. I wasn't completely naive that we wouldn't have to deal with that sort of stuff. I was just naive at the magnitude of it, the amount of it, and the massive impact it can have. I mean, I'll never forget, there was a patient I saw that would come in and he had chronic back pain, chronic back pain, would want to actively come in for treatment a lot as well. And then they retired, were stress-free, and then all of a sudden their back pain went.
No way. Oh, wow. That connection is real.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
God.
a lot of the time, if someone's had a acute flare-up of their pain, we were following a great order of, next stage of exercises, this treatment's work. And then all of a sudden there's just been this massive 2 steps back. I'm not afraid of asking them the question of if there's been big stresses in their life, and it could be a bereavement, it could be moving house, it could be a change of job or work stress. And I find that it emulates in their body, and it can emulate in their pain as well. So just, again, being an empath to that and knowing how to communicate with that and not being afraid to have difficult conversations around that side of things. So that's probably the biggest thing. But from a private perspective, this is not so much if you chose to go down the public health employment, but from a private perspective, the amount of hats that I have to wear. I'm not just a physio. I'm a marketing person. I'm the accountant person. I'm the business developer person. I'm the communicator with new client inquiries, all of that sort of stuff that you don't really get exposed to at university, or even when you're on placement in the real world. You don't really get exposed to that, because most of the time you go on a placement where it's a well-established clinic and there's a receptionist that deals with X aspect, and you're just with the physio who's doing the physio aspect. You don't see it from the ground up, because most people that are in the ground up phase can't take on a student. So you see the end goal, you never see the brand behind it. Was that a famous golfer that he was interviewed and they said, oh, you can keep getting luckier, and he was like, it's funny, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And you don't see that aspect that people just assume happens quickly, like that overnight. So the many hats. Marketing is not something I would never dream of sitting in front of a camera 5 years ago, and now I'm just kind of, you have to do it, don't you? Someone's got to find out about me somehow. It's not going to happen if I don't do this. I don't leave the house. Yeah, the many hats. If you're going down the private route, be prepared to not just be a physio. Yeah. And find time for that as well. It's important to put time aside for it.
Yeah, great. So finally, any advice to anyone looking to enter this industry?
Yeah, know why you want to do it, because of the impact that you can have, because of how important it is and vulnerable it is to people, and their pain is debilitating. What are you doing it for? And I felt I was one of these people. It's so incredible to work with a sports person and see all of that, and it's so interesting, but why are you actually doing it? And do you want to do it to make that impact, or do you want to do it because it seems cool to look after this rugby player and that tennis player? And that was really interesting that you heard about Andy Murray's hip operation, and that he come back from that, and the real world, real patients that you see, that the day-to-day people aren't always that aspect. Is actually you're making it so someone can get out of bed and look after their kid in the morning, or you're making it so that someone can live on their own still because they're worried about losing their independence. It's knowing why you want to do it. And then if you still then want to do physio, you don't have to take the expected route. I am the prime example of someone that didn't take the route that most people take. You are encouraged to go work in the NHS and do your rotations when you leave, and it wasn't what was going to make me happy. At the end of the day, we spend a lot of our lives at work. You've got to enjoy it, and it's got to be something that's rewarding and fulfilling, because what's the point otherwise? You want to find a job that you love doing. And I don't see myself having have gone down that route and really truly enjoying it.
Yeah.
If you go down the physiotherapy route, you get the chance to dabble in these things.
Yeah.
Placement allows you to understand whether you would. And I really nearly got switched out of this. It was very, very close. I loved my pediatric neurological placement. I found it so rewarding, but it wasn't quite fulfilling as this route of things for me. And I sort of sat to myself and was like, can I do this full time for a job? Was this something that I would really, really want to do forever? And I found that this was more fulfilling than that. And the things that I thought I wanted to do and went and made it happen on placement, I ended up thinking, no, actually, I don't want to do that, which was really shocking. I thought the last placement I did, that was my thing. And then actually, again, going back to why do I do this, didn't match up with that job role. So yeah, just ended up sticking out and being self-employed and running my own clinic. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No, it was a pleasure. I hope it's helped anyone that's thinking of getting into physiotherapy.
Yeah, 100%. Can people find you? Are you happy to take questions if people want to get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. The classic social media. So I'm Becca_Dynamic Recoveries on Instagram. There's also the main Dynamic Recoveries Instagram as well. My Becca_Dynamic Recoveries kind of covers more of what the reality of being a physiotherapy in the private world is. So if that's something you're more intrigued about, then please reach out to me there. Our website is dynamicrecoveries.co.uk, and there's a website form on there that will get pushed through to me if it's a direct question about employment or how to get into physio. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No problem.